Welcome back, all my 40K fanatics out there. I'm DJ here with Tim's Nation, bringing you another video for my cronies. I've seen a lot of conversations over the internet recently talking about the Doomsday Ark and the Canoptic DoomStalker, in a comparison of which one's better and which one should be put into most armies when looking for a strong, long-range weapon for possibly anti-vehicle choices or just anti-tough infantry. And considering the fact that they both are very, very similar, it should be very easy on which one to pick. And after looking through it a little bit more, the decision's actually not as simple. Some of it does come down to a personal preference, in my opinion, and with this video, hopefully you guys, this will help you make a decision on which unit you want to run in your Necron Dynasty. Guys, thanks for tuning in, and as always, please subscribe to the channel, like, share, and leave a comment down below. Your comments help me create other videos and create other content when I see what the conversations are and what's on people's mind. We've had a lot of support over the last couple of months, especially with 10th edition releasing, so I thank all of you guys for that. And with that being said, let's jump over into the Canoptic DoomStalker and the Doomsday Ark and start looking at a comparison. So first things first, let's compare their stat characteristics. Let's talk about the Doomsday Ark. The Doomsday Ark has a movement characteristic of 9, toughness 9, 3-up save, 14 wounds, leadership of 6, and objective control value of 5. Versus the Canoptic DoomStalker, which has only a move of 7, toughness 8, 3-up save, 12 wounds, and leadership of 8, and a 4 objective control value. So on paper right now, the Doomsday Ark looks like the clear winner. It has more move, better toughness, more wounds, way better leadership, and a higher objective control value. Now, there's a couple things to look at when we talk about this first real quick. The objective control value being between 4 and 5 is kind of not that necessary. If your opponent's streamlined into your backfield where these units are hopefully going to be, then either A, they've got way, way higher objective control value and are just going to take it away from you, or they are so low and piddly down that you'll have enough units there to still be able to control it. So in my personal opinion, the one objective control value is not really that much of a big deal. The stats that really seem to stick out to me here for the Doomsday Ark's benefit are the toughness 9, as well as the leadership value of 6. The 14 and 12 wounds, while having more wounds is always considered a better thing, the 2 additional wounds, considering reanimation protocols and stuff like that, probably isn't necessarily that crucial when deciding which unit is stronger or a better choice. But that leadership value of 6 versus a leadership value of 8 is important for battle shock purposes. When these units get down to less than half their wounds, they're going to have to test battle shock, which means that that leadership value could play into this very, very much so. On the opposite side of this, once you fail a leadership, what actually happens? Well, you become objective control value 0. You cannot use stratagems on that unit. And that's really about it that's going to affect these guys. Oh, and falling back is more difficult in that scenario, which, again, if you're in combat, you're probably in trouble in other ways. But for the most part, the biggest effect is probably the fact that these guys would not be able to be affected by stratagems with a failed leadership. And especially for the Canoptic DoomStalker, who its ability is definitely going to be stratagem reliant. Now, looking over at the movement characteristic, the 9 and the 7, that 2 extra inches for units that are range units such as these doesn't seem like that's going to be really that relevant. The Doomsday Ark is a sizable model, so having the extra move will just kind of help it if you try to utilize fly. Where the 7-inch move on the DoomStalker, that's still not bad. It's still able to maneuver around the field and make its range. However, can't lie that it definitely right now, stats for stats, pound for pound, the DoomStalker has it over the the Doomsday Ark has it over the Canoptic DoomStalker just on stats on paper. Let's move down to the weapons. So they both have a Doomsday weapon. The Doomsday Ark has the cannon, and the DoomStalker has a blaster. Both of which are blast, Both are heavy, so if they sit still, they're going to get +1 to hit. The cannon is a 72-inch range, while the blaster is only a 48. Right away, I feel like the 48 is going to be plenty when we're talking about unit comparisons. There's terrain on the field and other things that might block line of sight, so 72-inch range seems a little bit excessive in a standard competitive format. So either way, the 48, the 72 still seem pretty respectable for the ranges and for the weapons themselves. When you go to the shots, they both have D6 +1 attacks, and with blast, for every 5 models, you're getting additional hit or additional shot. The ballistic skill. The ballistic skill on the DoomStalker is going to be a 4-up, while the Doomsday Ark is a 3-up. This is significant, and this is going to come back up a couple of times when we talk about some of the abilities and other things that these two units can do. When we move over to the strength profile of the weapon, the strength of the cannon is a 15 compared to the Doomsday Blaster at only a 14. And I will say 100%, this is really irrelevant until you get up to a vehicle or a unit that has a toughness of 14 or 15. The numbers aren't going to change. At half, if you have a unit that has a toughness 7, then you are still double its toughness on either weapon. And once you go up to toughness 8, both the Doomsday Cannon and the Doomsday Blaster are both going to be wounding on 3s from that point. So the 1 point of strength is really irrelevant. The AP value is a 4 on the cannon and a 3 on the blaster. And while that might not seem like that much, with things like cover and armor of contempt, that can really reduce the Doomsday Blaster down to an AP of 1 after you get through the armor of contempt and the cover save, and can make it so that your opponent's looking at Marines with like a 4-up save in that sense. Where the Doomsday Cannon having the AP 4 in those same scenarios can at least still keep it at an AP of 2. That's definitely some serious things to note with it, is that AP value is going to be very, very important, especially in this edition that a lot of other things have damage reduction. Damage reduction to the gun profile shooting, that is. And last is the damage. The Doomsday Cannon is coming in at 4 damage, where the Doomsday Blaster is only coming in at 3. So the Doomsday Cannon 4 is better than 3. But the question you have to ask yourself is, what are you shooting these things at that 4 is going to matter over the 3? A lot of times it's going to be you're shooting at vehicles trying to do damage to take them down. If you're shooting at infantry and things like that, that 3 damage is still enough to take out 3-wound Terminator and units of that sort. Having the 4 damage is nice, and I can say there are definitely some situations where having that 4 damage is going to be much, much better, as if you watch my previous video, multiple times in going into multiple units, the Doomsday Ark was usually able to kill some larger targets with only going through 2 of the Doomsday Arks, where 3 Doomstalkers were required to take out all those targets. Last but not least on these data sheets, we're going to move down is to their abilities. So the Doomsday Ark's ability is that if this thing sits still, you now have devastating wounds. So not only when you sit still are you getting the +1 for firing the heavy weapon, but you're also going to get a devastating wound buff, which devastating wounds are very, very powerful. And being able to circumvent invulnerable saves and put those wounds directly onto something with mortal, or hitting a 1-wound target unit and being able to push those 4 mortal wounds throughout it will be very, very nice. However, they're very unreliable. It's a very chance on hit for this. There's nothing in the Necron army that's going to allow you to reliably have that devastating wounds on these vehicles. You can tap into reroll on the wounds, but you're not going to be able to tap into the actual reduction of it for like a 5-up crit or anything like that to be able to make sure that you can hit with those abilities on a higher level. The Doomstalker's ability is very interesting, and at first I looked at it, I was like, this doesn't really matter that much. The Doomstalker allows you to overwatch at a 5-up, and honestly, after rolling this out and seeing this is actually really nasty, and I really, really like this a lot. Being able to overwatch at a 5-up increases the amount of hits that you're going to do drastically. I'm sure someone in the comments section can give some numerics around this value, but in my recent game against Lane, that 5-up Overwatch constituted me being able to take out a speeder before it was even able to pop any of its abilities. So that 5-up Overwatch is actually really, really nice. So they both have a 4-up invulnerable save, which means they both have that kind of similar defensive profile in that, so nothing really much to note there. So I guess this is where I cut the video off and just say, all right, Doomsday Ark is better than the DoomStalker, and that's it. I mean, we look at the stats on paper. It's got a better, stronger gun, more damage, better stats, tougher stats, better leadership, better this, better that, better everything. So why would you ever want to take the Canoptic DoomStalker when the Doomsday Ark is a viable option? That's what we're going to talk about here, because there's a lot of things in here that may not be things you're thinking about, and maybe things that it might manipulate that a little bit to make you want to take the DoomStalker over the Doomsday Ark. So when we look at these two units, one of the things we need to think about is how we're getting these into an army, and what is the cost and investment. And there's a couple of things that we need to look at here. First of all, before we get into the cost and investment, I want to talk about these models on the table. So, being the fact that we play this game in inches, I measured these guys out a little bit, so don't yell at me if I'm off by like a centimeter or so here. But roughly, the DoomStalker, while being a tall model, its base is only 3.5 inches wide, as opposed to the DoomStalker, which has a length of 9.5 inches. This means a couple of things. One, it's going to be more difficult to hide and protect the Doomsday Ark over the DoomStalker. With that being said, the Doomsday Ark is you really are going to want to sit this thing still to get its full complement of abilities. Sitting the thing still on the field with that much length to this unit means that your opponent's going to have a very, very easy time finding line of sight and being able to hit this thing and do potentially more damage. So while the Doomsday Ark may have the better defensive profile, it may need it where the DoomStalker is able to hide and maneuver a bit easier. Also, the Doomsday Ark has fly. The Doomsday Ark flying on hand in hand from 9th edition would mean, oh, well, that's great. But now with having to move over buildings and measure the distance in the air, fly is not quite as good as it used to be. Even if you turn the thing sideways and try and move it on a side, it has a width from flare to flare of 5 inches. This means that if you want to try and fly over that building, you're going to have be almost right up onto a wall to get to the other side. So the fly mechanic on a Doomsday Ark is not necessarily going to lead you to that much maneuverability. With it having the 9-inch move, you'd most likely have to advance. And as far as hiding this thing, that's going to be difficult to hide multiple of these. Now, if you're looking at just taking one could be very easily hidden, but if it gets shot and destroyed, there goes some of your anti-vehicle option. Pending you don't have anything else, that could lead you into a rough time. The DoomStalker, having a 3.5-inch base, still gives a good amount of coverage to be able to block out deep strikers, but it's much easier to hide from everything that is not Titanic or towering, as we now know it. Now, that's not the only thing that involves bringing it into a list. Let's talk about the points, because this is what's interesting. When you actually start breaking down the points of these things, that's where it starts to really kind of make you think and spiral on this. Because again, the Doomsday Ark on paper has the better gun, has the better profile. While sitting it still to get the devastating wounds may be very, very difficult, that means that also sitting the Canoptic DoomStalker still to get the +1 to hit for heavy is also going to be very difficult. Same with the Doomsday Ark, but that means that the Stalker hitting on 4s is going to be very rough. So what do? We have a couple of options here. And when you start investing into this, and you start investing into this pocket of damage, how this all plays out and what the cost is. Doomsday Ark comes in at 185 points, whereas the DoomStalker comes in at only 125 points. Some quick math gives us 3 Doomsday Arks coming in at 555 points, as opposed to the DoomStalkers, which would come in at 375 points. The difference is 60 points per model, or 180 points for the 3. Now, to be able to get the +1 to hit, we have 2 options here. One, we have the Sovereign Enhancement that can go on any character, and that would functionally be good for both of them. The cheapest character option we would have is the Royal Warden at 40 points with the 30-point enhancement. However, the Doomstalkers could also tap into a Technomancer with a Canoptic Control node. Both units would need to attach to a squad, not having Lone Operative, but the Technomancer can come in at 60 points, which is 10 points cheaper. Now, the Canoptic Control node only gives +1 to Canoptic units, so it wouldn't be strong in the overall scheme of things when you have other units that you may want to get that +1 to hit on. So the cheapest option is the Royal Warden. I personally like a Hexmark Destroyer that would come in at 100 points, but let's go with the cheap option for now. If we do the cheap option, which is the Royal Warden with the Sovereign, that puts the Doomsday Arks at 625 points, where the Doomstalkers would be 445 for the same combo, or 435 if you took the Techno. That is that difference of 180 points on top of the Doomsday Arks costing 625. And if you want a Spider in there for Feel No Pain, you're looking at 700 points just for 3 Doomsday Arks. Now, right away, what could you do with 180 points? The first thing that comes to my mind is Locust Heavy Destroyers. A 3-man squad of Locust Heavy Destroyers comes in at 135 points. Or run 2 units with 2 at 90 points apiece, and boom, there's your 180 points right on the money. So no matter which way around you go it, you could take 3 Doomsday Arks, or you could take 3 Doomstalkers and 4 Locust Heavy Destroyers as your firing support background. The Doomstalker allows you to have room to put in more units, more strength, and more power than the Doomsday Arks would allow. The Doomsday Arks are also going to be difficult to hide and maneuver around. But the Doomsday Arks pack a vicious, vicious punch. So again, the original question in this comparison, which one is better? It's going to matter on your list. I personally think that running 3 of the Doomsday Arks might be a little more expensive and not really as solid, where running 2 of them might be the nice safe spot. Doomstalker, on the other hand, is one that you kind of, when you got 2, you're going to have to push for that 3rd one to make sure that they're able to do the damage and be available for the Overwatch. But the nice thing is about it, this is a player choice option. This is really going to come down to your playstyle and your army, which is something I'm very happy to see. It's nice to see that while these both are very, very, very similar units, there is a reason to justify the Doomstalker or the Doomsday Ark, depending on your build and your style and your local meta in that sense. So there's really not a clear-cut winner in these 2. They're both great units. Hopefully some of this information that I brought to you can help you decide in what you want to do for your army. Maybe when you're building and you're like, man, I need to cut some points, maybe switch from Arks over to the Doomstalker. Maybe in the sense you're like, you know what, I just need that more damage and I don't feel where I'm getting it from the targets I have, but I don't have a lot of space. Maybe you just take 2 Doomsday Arks and call it a day. They are still very, very mean targets. Once again, hopefully some of the information in this video helps you make a decision on your list building, and I look forward to talking to y'all guys again soon. Comment down below what you guys think, and we'll see you in the next video.